Elena Rodriguez thought she had seen every kind of battle. She had chased suspects through foggy streets, stood in blood-stained living rooms, and held the hands of victims begging for justice. For 12 years as county sheriff, she had no concept of rest. But after everything, Elena decided to give herself 14 days. 14 days without sirens, without emergency briefings, without the desperate eyes of the public turning to her for answers. Just 14 days, she said, folding her sheriff's uniform and locking it in the steel cabinet. I just want to be a normal wife. She made a small list: fix the old wooden fence, replant the yellow chrysanthemums her grandmother loved, bake chocolate chip cookies for her husband in the morning, finish that novel collecting dust since last winter, and most importantly, not answer a single work call. On the first morning of her vacation, Elena woke early, made 2 cups of coffee, one for her, one for me. We sat on the porch, sunlight streaming through the leaves, the scent of pine from the nearby forest carried on the morning breeze. Elena leaned her head on my shoulder, hair falling softly, her eyes calm for the first time in years. Today is beautiful, she said, closing her eyes, taking a deep breath. And there will be more beautiful days, I replied, squeezing her hand gently. We didn't know that just a few houses down, Karen was watching. Karen, 52, president of Willowbrook, always wore crisp white blouses, khaki pants, her President Karen name tag clipped proudly to her chest. She carried a thick clipboard, prowling the neighborhood with laser-sharp eyes, scanning for stray leaves, blades of grass on a line, or water spots on driveways. Anyone violating the community aesthetic would receive a warning, or worse, a fine. Karen craved power, even if it was only the tiny power of a homeowners association. And she hated Elena. Why? Karen had bragged to the entire street that the house we now lived in was already secured for her sister. She had measured for curtains, chosen paint samples, told her friends, my sister will live there. But we bought it for $50,000 over asking, closed in 1 week, and her dream dissolved. From that moment, Karen saw Elena as the thief who stole what she deserved. And quietly, she began planning how to teach Elena a lesson. On the 3rd day of vacation, Elena wore shorts and a simple white t-shirt as she watered the garden. Sunlight warmed her tanned skin, her hair glowing, a soft hum on her lips as she carefully wiped water off the leaves. I stood inside, watching her, then noticed Karen standing on the corner, clipboard and ruler in hand, scribbling notes while staring at Elena. Elena didn't notice, looking up to smile at me. I'm going to bake chocolate chip cookies later, she said. I'll pick up milk, I replied, though my eyes didn't leave Karen's figure on the street. The next morning, Elena needed to back her car out so I could go to the store. She carefully reversed, aligning the wheels perfectly, except that her front tire was over the HOA common boundary by 5 centimeters. 5 centimeters. I measured it later. It was less than the width of a hand. But to Karen, it was an unforgivable crime. Within 30 seconds, Karen appeared as if summoned, ruler and clipboard ready. She measured the tire's position with precise satisfaction, her face lighting up as if she'd just caught a fugitive. Elena Rodriguez! Karen's voice cut through the morning air, sharp enough to make birds scatter. You are in violation of HOA Rule 7.3b, encroachment on communal property. This is your 3rd warning. Elena turned, still holding her steaming cup of coffee, eyes calm. Karen, I'll move the car. Karen held up her hand, smirking, eyes glinting. Too late. You'll be receiving a fine notice. I'll be reporting this to the board. Elena lowered her coffee, her expression shifting to the firm, quiet resolve I knew so well. Karen, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Karen's lips curled, pulling out her phone, starting to film Elena, muttering under her breath, evidence, evidence, HOA must be protected. Elena closed her eyes, taking a breath, before fixing her gaze on Karen. You're recording a law enforcement officer off duty, you know that? Karen. Karen paused for half a second, then smirked. You might be the sheriff out there, but in here, I am the law. That was the moment I knew Elena's vacation was over. Karen had just fired the first shot in what would become the craziest HOA war Willowbrook had ever seen. If you thought Karen's drama would end with a parking violation, you don't know Karen. The next morning, at exactly 5:00 a.m., our driveway became a war zone. I woke to the blaring sound of car alarms and flashing lights outside. Karen had dragged bright orange construction cones and lined them across our driveway, blocking us in. In the middle, tied to the largest cone, was a laminated sign that read, Parking restricted by order of HOA enforcement. Elena stood beside me in her robe, holding her morning coffee, phone in hand, calmly taking photos. Isn't this illegal? I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. Elena only shrugged, tapping her phone screen, and replied softly, let her keep digging her own hole. It took me 20 minutes to move the cones, which were heavy, while Karen stood on her lawn, recording me with her phone, muttering, Documenting theft of HOA property, endangering community safety. Around 2:00 p.m., it got weirder. I heard a scratching noise and found Karen plastering giant orange violation stickers on every window of our house. These weren't small, polite notices. They were massive neon rectangles screaming, "Grass exceeds regulation height by 1.4 inch. Mailbox tilt violates aesthetic standards. Visible garden hose creates eyesore." She even stuck one on our doorbell, claiming it was too loud. Elena opened the door, coffee still in hand, watching Karen with that calm sheriff look, but said nothing. "Should we call the police?" I asked quietly. Elena shook her head, voice barely above a whisper. "Let her escalate. Document everything." That night at exactly 11:00 p.m., Karen's next move shattered any illusion of peace. Through a PA system, Karen's voice boomed across Willowbrook, "Atio rasa diance. Be aware that criminals are living among BR 4278. Remain vigilant." The message repeated every hour until 300 am. Lights flicked on in every house, children cried, a dog started howling. At 20:15 am, a neighbor shouted, "Sashit up, Karam." She only paused for a moment before continuing, "Defenders of criminals will also be held accountable under HOA Rule 9.7. The next morning, 6:00 am sharp, Karen arrived dressed in what looked like a cheap police costume. A navy blue shirt with ENFRCMT in iron-on letters, a fake utility belt filled with zip ties and pepper spray, and a plastic badge. She marched up and down our sidewalk, taking photos and speaking into a walkie-talkie that didn't seem connected to anything. I watched from the window as neighbors peeked out, their faces a mix of fear and disbelief. By noon, Karen taped a fake eviction notice to our door. It was clearly homemade, printed from a template, citing OA codes that likely didn't exist. "You have 24 hours to vacate the premises or face HOA enforcement action." At the bottom, she signed it. Officer K, Chief of HOA Enforcement Division. Elena laughed softly for the first time in days. "She's going all in, huh?" She carefully peeled off the notice, adding it to a growing folder she labeled, "Karen Evidence." That evening, we thought we might get a break, but Karen had one more move. At 8:00 p.m., she set up a folding table and chairs on our front lawn. Yes, our actual property. She called it an emergency neighborhood watch meeting. About 5 neighbors showed up, mostly out of curiosity, as Karen stood behind her makeshift podium, gesturing dramatically at our house while ranting about criminal elements threatening property values, children's safety under siege, systematic violations of HOA standards. In the middle of her speech, Karen pulled out a brand new police utility belt from a bag, strapping it around her waist with the pride of a child wearing a superhero costume. She announced, "Soon, I will have the authority to protect this neighborhood properly." I stood at the window, looking at Elena, who simply sipped her coffee, eyes calm but sharp. "What does she think she's doing?" I whispered. Elena looked at me, her expression the same as when she walked into a tense negotiation. "She's building a case in her mind. But she doesn't know who she's dealing with." As the meeting ended, neighbors dispersed, some shaking their heads, others looking worried. Karen stood on our lawn, arms crossed, scanning the street like a guard dog, the plastic badge on her chest glinting under the porch light. Inside, Elena opened her notebook and began writing time, date, witnesses. Exact words Karen had shouted. "What are you writing?" I asked. She didn't look up, her voice steady. "Building my case." Because Karen didn't realize the woman she was trying to bully was not just another homeowner. Elena was the sheriff. And the sheriff was done watching. Karen couldn't stop. Power was her oxygen. And the quieter Elena stayed, the more desperate Karen became to break her silence. That morning, Elena was watering the chrysanthemums in our front yard, wearing simple jeans and a soft white t-shirt. Her hair was tied back, her focus calm, her presence peaceful. Beside the flower bed, her coffee cup steamed gently in the cool morning air. Karen stormed down the street, wearing her fake police costume, the cheap navy shirt with ENFORC meant ironed on the back, a toy utility belt with zip ties and a dollar store pepper spray bottle, and that ridiculous plastic badge on her chest. She marched straight up the walkway, her eyes burning with triumph, clipboard in one hand, fake handcuffs in the other. "There you are." Karen's voice was shrill enough to startle the sparrows in the bushes. "You're watering outside of approved HOA hours. You're under arrest." Elena glanced up, brushing a droplet of water from her cheek. "Karen, I'm watering my own flowers." Karen pulled out a paper, waving it dramatically. "This is your 3rd warning. You are now officially being taken into custody." Elena's brow furrowed slightly, her calm like the surface of a lake before a storm. "Excuse me." Karen stepped forward, snapping the toy handcuffs, a mad glint in her eyes. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can." Elena raised a hand, her voice dropping into that low, Commanding register I'd heard countless times when she was de-escalating violent suspects. Karen, step back. Now. But Karen was beyond reason. She lunged trying to grab Elena's wrist to slap on the toy cuffs. That's when Elena's eyes hardened. She deflected Ivan's hand effortlessly with a practiced move that showed she wasn't just a peaceful homeowner. She was law enforcement. I'm warning you. Do not touch me. Karen froze for a half second. Then, like a child denied a toy, she fumbled her phone and dialed 911 right in front of us, shrieking as she paced in tiny circles.
Weiss, I am in assistance!
I am performing a citizen's arrest on a dangerous criminal resisting HOA enforcement. The 911 call, that changed everything. I could hear the dispatcher's calm voice through Karen's speaker. Or 911, what's your emergency? Karen's voice cracked with excitement. I am an HOA enforcement officer. I am trying to arrest a suspect who is violating water regulations, and she is resisting. The dispatcher paused. Is the suspect armed? Ma'am. Karen's eyes darted around, then landed on Elena's steaming coffee cup on the porch step. She pointed at it as if it were a loaded gun. She has a scalding hot liquid weapon. She could throw it at me at any moment. I nearly choked, but Elena's face remained carved in calm stone. The dispatcher's voice was measured. Mom, please clarify. Is the suspect currently threatening you with this coffee? Karen shrieked. She's holding it. She's staring at me. She's a danger to the community. The dispatcher sighed, then said, Units are en route. Please remain calm. Karen hung up, crossing her arms with a smug, twisted grin. You're done, Sheriff Imposter. You're about to go to jail. Rolana picked up her coffee, took a sip, and simply replied, I'll wait. When real cops arrived 7 minutes later, the street exploded in flashing red and blue lights. 2 police cruisers pulled up, sirens cutting off as 4 officers stepped out with trained caution. Leading them was Lieutenant Martinez, a tall, broad-shouldered officer in his 40s whose calm presence spoke of years on the force. Karen nearly tripped over herself running toward them, waving her toy badge.
Officers! Thank God!
Arrest her, she's resisting HOA enforcement. Martinez held up a hand, his eyes scanning the scene. Elena, standing quietly with her coffee. Karen in her fake uniform, breathing heavily, frozen on the porch. Martinez turned to Karen, voice calm, Ma'am, can you explain exactly what's going on? Karen's face flushed purple as she sputtered. She's violating HOA water restrictions.
She's resisting arrest!
I demand you arrest her immediately. Martinez looked at Elena, and recognition sparked in his eyes. He stood straighter, cleared his throat, and nodded with professional respect. Sheriff Rodriguez. Karen's jaw dropped. Sheriff what? No, she's lying. Elena lowered her coffee, gave a small nod. Morning, Martinez. Karen's voice broke as she tried to laugh. No, this is a setup. She's pretending. Martinez's eyes hardened as he turned fully toward Karen. Ma'am, are you aware that impersonating an officer is a crime? Karen's eyes darted back and forth. I'm not impersonating. I'm OA enforcement. I have a badge. She jabbed a finger at her plastic badge, which now looked pitifully small. Martinez sighed, exchanging a glance with his fellow officers. Sheriff, do you want to press charges for harassment or false reporting? Elena tilted her head, studying Karen, who was trembling now. Not yet, she said softly. But I will be filing a restraining order. Karen's knees buckled, and she dropped to the curb, tears streaking down her cheeks as she babbled. I just wanted to keep the neighborhood safe. I just wanted control. Her Elena's face softened for a moment, her eyes reflecting a quiet, tired compassion. This isn't the way to protect anything, Karen. At the calm before the storm, Martinez patted Elena on the shoulder, nodded, and signaled for his team to clear the scene. As the cruisers pulled away, neighbors peeked through curtains, some openly filming, others whispering. Karen remained on the curb, clutching her fake badge, rocking back and forth, whispering to herself. That evening, Elena sat on our porch with her tea, watching the glow of streetlights. I joined her, the quiet settling between us. Is it over? I asked. Elena's eyes stayed on the street, the wind rustling the leaves above. No, she whispered. Karen isn't finished. And deep down, I knew she was right. Because Karen had tasted power, and she would rather destroy herself, and everyone around her, before letting it go. If you thought Karen's 9/11 stunt would slow her down, you underestimated her desperation for control. The day after the police left, the neighborhood felt oddly quiet. Elena spent the morning planting marigolds near the porch, hoping for a moment of normalcy. But Karen was watching from behind her curtains, her face pale, eyes sunken from lack of sleep. At 8:00 p.m., as dusk settled, Karen made her next move. A loudspeaker, mounted on her porch roof, crackled to life, emitting a high-pitched feedback that made neighbors flinch. At TNTO Wello Bureaucradence, Karen's voice boomed, amplified and cold. Chase Suamana Sefatuano Ansimantuan. Alina stepped onto our porch, arms crossed, jaw tight. Karen continua gramanala amenti has afelido uarkamu on white. Ausa br 4278 is harbor armda foi damandio b ablav frc memnafa. Lights flicked on in every house, curtains parted. Cell phones appeared, recording. Raparte el suzuexti y. Ts is your parasadi ace pkigi. Elena calmly pulled out her phone, recording the entire broadcast. Inside I could see neighbors texting us, some sending laughing emojis, others asking if they should call the real police. She's escalating, Elena said softly, her eyes. 1100 p.m. The loudspeaker fired up again. Attempt tiarf is nato infetl residence mas t reminindo ingual far eshar naiti. A neighbor yelled from across the street. Sad itoff care. Karen ignored it. She broadcasted every hour, on the hour, until 300 a.m. sleep. Deprived neighbors stood on their porches, robes wrapped tight, glaring across the street at Karen's house, her loudspeaker casting her voice across the lawns like a dictator's decree. The HOA emergency meeting. The next day, a HOA emergency meeting was called, held at the community center. Karen arrived in her her enforcement uniform, her clipboard stacked with papers, eyes wild with a twisted sense of purpose. She set up a PowerPoint titled, "The Corruption Next Door." Elena and I sat in the third row. Around us, neighbors filled the seats, some sipping coffee, others recording for social media, the air buzzing with anticipation. Karen slammed her clipboard on the podium. "We are here to address the ongoing threat to Willowbrook. A so-called sheriff is endangering our community, flaunting fake authority, and ignoring HOA standards." She flipped a slide showing a blurry photo of Alina watering the garden, circled in red. "Here is evidence of water regulation violations." Another slide appeared. A photo of our garbage can place 6 inches from the curb. Improper garbage placement. Proof of lawlessness. Some neighbors laughed softly. Others shook their heads, uncomfortable. Karen's voice grew shriller. "She has manipulated law enforcement. She has corrupted this community's values. As your president, I will restore order." A man in the back, Frank, a longtime neighbor, raised his hand. "Karen, are you serious right now?" Karen glared. "Frank, your siding is overdue for painting. You may want to remain silent." The room erupted in murmurs. Elena stood up, her calm commanding presence silencing the chatter. She stepped forward, holding a thick folder. "I'd like to share some facts with the community." Karen hissed, "Sit down, imposter." Elena ignored her and laid out documents on the front table. "Here are 147 photos Karen has taken of our property without consent, dating back 11 months. A gasp echoed around the room. "Here are 32 violation notices she created and left on our home, none approved by the HOA board." She held up a USB drive. "And here are recordings of her loudspeaker broadcasts, which violate city noise ordinances." Karen's face drained of color. Frank stood up, raising his phone. "I recorded last night's broadcast. My kids couldn't sleep." "Karen, you've lost your mind." Another neighbor, Mrs. Chen, her hands trembling, stood. "Karen, you fined me $200 because my grandchildren drew chalk on the sidewalk." Karen's voice cracked. "All of this is for your Safi." Elena placed a final document on the table. "And here is the police report from the 911 call, clearly stating that Karen attempted to perform an illegal arrest while impersonating law enforcement." Karen's meltdown. Karen lunged for the table, trying to grab the documents. "Why you can't provnhig?" Security for the HA meeting stepped forward, blocking Karen. "You're a liar, Elena!" Karen screamed, veins bulging in her neck. "IMT at ER." Richard, Karen's husband, appeared at the doorway, looking exhausted, his eyes red. He stepped forward holding a USB drive. "This is from our home security cameras." "Karen, I'm sorry, but you've gone too far." Karen's head snapped around, eyes wide. "Richard, how could you?" Richard's voice shook. "You've terrorized this neighborhood for years. It ends now." The vote. The AOA president called for a vote of confidence. Hands went up, row by row. Karen's supporters were few, visibly shrinking in their seats as neighbors glared. The count came down to 47-3. Karen was removed as HOA president, banned from holding any HOA position again, banned from using the HOA loudspeaker system. Karen's scream shattered the quiet. "No, you can't do this. I am or president, a well so evro few." But no one moved to help her. A fragile calm as neighbors filtered out, some hugging, others shaking their heads. Elena stood in the middle of the room, watching Karen. "It's over," I whispered. Elena shook her head. "No, for Karen, it's never over." And she was right. Because Karen wasn't done yet. She would rather burn everything down than accept defeat. And what she did next would turn this neighborhood upside down. You might think after the HOA vote, Karen would crawl back into her house, defeated. But you don't know Karen. She would rather burn down everything around her before giving up her illusion of control. The flashing lights that night, As Alina and I settled into bed, a pulsing red and blue glow swept across our window blinds. Alina rose, quietly pulling her robe tight, eyes sharp. We stepped onto the porch. There under the street lamp was Karen's old minivan, now rigged with cheap red and blue flashing lights she bought online, stuck to the roof with duct tape. Karen sat behind the wheel, wearing her fake enforcement uniform, a toy badge pinned crookedly, a plastic walkie-talkie taped to her shoulder. In one hand she held a large flashlight, sweeping it across lawns, driveways, and porches. Thisaoa patirarol al rasidiansir ratirarorine indors. Karen's voice barked from a loudspeaker duct taped to the roof, crackling with static. Alina stood silently, arms crossed, her eyes unblinking as Karen's flashlight swept over us. Neighbors peeked through curtains, some recording, some simply shaking their heads. Frank from across the street leaned out his window, a resigned look on his face. This is getting out of hand. Karen drove slowly down the street, her lights casting manic flashes, her flashlight scanning every bush, every car, every porch as she scribbled notes furiously onto her clipboard. I turned to Alina. Are you going to stop her? She shook her head, her gaze cold. No. Let her dig her own grave. That night at exactly 300 am the loudspeaker crackled again. A TNDO wheel and obubaroke, ses pu safety avidi has been titide t house 4278. Her van idled in front of our driveway, lights still flashing. I glanced at Alina, seeing exhaustion in her eyes but also a steely calm. She wants me to react, Elena murmured, so she can claim I threatened her. Karen's fake citations. The next morning, I opened our front door to find 5 handwritten citations, taped across our door and mailbox. Violation: lawn height exceeds OA standard by 0.5 inches. Violation: parking at a 3-degree angle from curb. Violation: unauthorized garden decoration. Elena's nonique. Violation: disruption of HOA authority. Violation: failure to respect OA curfew orders. I clenched my fists, rage rising. Elena took them calmly, flipping through each citation, before filing them neatly into a thick folder. Each one of these is evidence, she said softly. Karen's door-to-door threats. That afternoon, Mrs. Chen visited us, shaking, tears in her eyes. Karen came to my door, she said, told me if I didn't testify against you, she'd fine me $500 and have my car towed. Karen was going door to door, handing out flyers that read, Sheriff Rau threatens HOA, residents required to provide evidence against impersonator. But something had changed. This time, the neighborhood wasn't afraid. Frank texted Elena, I have videos of her loudspeaker at 2 a.m. The Paddle family sent photos. She stood outside our house for 20 minutes, writing on her clipboard. A Mrs. Chen whispered. She threatened me, but I'm done being scared. The neighborhood unites. Neighbors began sending Elena photos, videos and messages, documenting every moment of Karen's escalating harassment. Elena's phone buzzed constantly as she built a wall of evidence. That night, at our kitchen table under the soft glow of the lamp, Elena organized every piece of evidence: videos, screenshots, citations, voice recordings. Her face was focused, calm, no fear, only determination. She's broken so many laws I've lost count, Elena said, flipping through documents. Harassment, false reporting, impersonating law enforcement, stalking, noise ordinance violations. She looked up at me, her eyes sharp. It's time to end this. The final plan. I watched Elena as she placed her sheriff's badge on the table, next to the thick folder of evidence. She locked the badge in a small box and took a breath. Tomorrow, she whispered, Karen learns what real law looks like. That night, as we lay in bed, I saw Elena's hand resting on my chest, her breathing slow and steady, her mind already planning the next morning. Outside in the dark, Karen's minivan patrolled once more, lights flashing weakly, her voice crackling from the speaker. Chichoy Petaral, yo we well oby. But I knew, and Elena knew, tomorrow, it would end. Karen's obsession had crossed every line. That night she wasn't just patrolling, she was hunting. At 2:47 a.m. the flashing lights returned, sweeping across our windows, drenching the walls in red and blue pulses like a disco for the damned. Elena stood by the window, arms folded, eyes cold. She wasn't afraid. She was done. Tonight's the last, she whispered. She picked up her phone, dialed a secure line. This is Sheriff Elena Rodriguez. We're ready. Karen's last patrol outside. Karen was standing beside her minivan, wearing her fake uniform, megaphone in one hand, clipboard in the other. She shouted into the night, a titione. Haus 4278 as una and VTR off for DEFstigatioi. Neighbors, awakened by the noise, peeked out of windows. Some recorded on their phones, tired but eager for proof to send to Elena. Karen's voice crackled. An rasistan ce wella be conseil de aasts com minute. Elena opened the door, stepping onto the porch. She wore a simple hoodie, jeans and held her coffee cup, calm as always. Karen, Elena said, voice steady. It's over. Karen's eyes, wild in the flashing lights, narrowed.
Why don't TV orders? I am T-Ladder,
She pointed a finger, trembling with rage. Why you are UNDR Kazan's arrest? Karen pulled out her badge, and a spray-painted black water gun aiming it at Alina. The absurdity would have been laughable if it wasn't so dark. The standoff Alina raised one eyebrow. Karen, put that down before you get hurt. Yo ish menwy mu1 Yo vitakan everytn for me. She stepped closer, shaking, the fake gun wavering. You think you're better than me because you wear a badge? Well, I have one too. Elena's phone buzzed once. She glanced at it. They're here. Suddenly, real sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights, brighter and real, turned the corner, flooding the street. 4 police cruisers pulled up, doors opening. Officers stepped out, hands on real weapons. Karen turned, eyes wide, frozen. No, this isn't how it's supposed to be. The lead officer, Martinez, approached slowly, his voice calm but firm. Ma'am. Drop the weapon and get on the ground. Karen pointed the fake gun wildly, screaming, "No, star, IAMTA sedient." Martinez's voice dropped lower, steel beneath calms. Karen, this is your last warning. Karen's knees buckled, and she dropped the fake gun, falling to the asphalt sobbing. I just wanted them to listen. I just wanted respect. The arrest 2 officers cuffed her gently, reading her rights. She mumbled through tears. It's not fair, it's not fair. Neighbors emerged in pajamas, robes, phones recording, broadcasting the end of Karen's tyranny lived to the world. Mrs. Chen whispered, tears in her eyes. It's finally over. Frank crossed his arms, nodding as the officers led Karen to the patrol car. About damn time. Karen's face, streaked with tears, pressed against the cruiser's window as she was driven away, lights fading into the dawn. The neighborhood wakes up as the sun began to rise. Neighbors gathered outside our house, relief washing over tired faces. Alina stepped forward, sipping her coffee. Thank you, Sheriff, Mrs. Chen said, her voice cracking. Elena smiled softly. You all did this. You stood up for yourselves. Frank clapped Elena on the shoulder. You gave us back our home. For the first time in months, the street felt safe. Children rode bikes without fear of Karen's clipboard. Neighbors chatted freely, laughing, letting go of tension held too long. Karen's charges later that day, news broke Karen Mitchell charged with impersonating a law enforcement officer. Stalking, harassment, filing false reports, disturbing the peace, brandishing a replica weapon. She was held without bail pending psychiatric evaluation. The HOA board issued a public apology promising reforms and permanently banning Karen from any HO activities. Alina's quiet moment that evening. Alina sat on the porch, watching the sunset. She looked tired but peaceful. I handed her a cup of tea, and we sat in silence. It's really over now? I asked. She exhaled slowly. It's over. Karen's reign of terror had ended not with a bang, but with a quiet, desperate whimper under real flashing lights. And as the neighborhood exhaled, we realized it sometimes. The real badge isn't what grants power. It's the courage to stand up even when no one else will. After Karen's arrest, the silence in Willowbrook was almost deafening. No more late-night broadcasts. No more flashing fake sirens. No more threats, notes, or loudspeaker warnings. For the first time in months, people could sleep. A new dawn the morning after Karen was taken away. Neighbors slowly emerged from their homes, as if testing the air, wondering if it was real. Frank walked down the street with his ancient beagle, tipping his hat at people he had barely spoken to before. Mrs. Chen placed a small pot of flowers on her porch, something Karen would have cited her for. Children rode scooters, shouting and laughing, their voices bouncing off the quiet houses. The gathering that evening, the neighbors gathered on our lawn, an impromptu meeting, not of fear, but of relief. Alina stepped out, still in her simple jeans and a sweater, a cup of coffee in her hand. She looked tired, but her shoulders were relaxed for the first time in weeks. You don't have to stand guard anymore, Sheriff, Frank joked, trying to lighten the moment. Elena smiled. You never needed me to stand guard, she replied. You just needed to believe you could stand up for yourselves. Mrs. Chen wiped tears from her eyes. Thank you, she said, her voice soft but clear. For protecting us, even when we didn't know how to protect ourselves. Karen's house sat dark, the blinds pulled tight. Richard had moved out, and the HOA had seized Karen's HOA files, discovering years of unapproved documents and fake citations. It was strange to walk past that house without fear, to see it just as another house on the block, stripped of the fear it once commanded. The bonfire that weekend. The neighborhood held a small bonfire gathering at Frank's backyard. People brought marshmallows, hot chocolate and folding chairs. At the center was a small metal bin, where neighbors, one by one, dropped in the fake violation notices Karen had given them. They burned, curling into ash, floating up into the dark sky. To new beginnings. Frank toasted, raising a plastic cup. Elena raised her coffee. To community. Everyone clinked cups in the chilly air. Elena's reflection later that night, Alina sat with me on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, looking up at the stars. Do you think she'll come back? I asked quietly. Alina shook her head. No, she said, but her eyes were distant. Karen is gone, but there will always be someone like her, somewhere. She sipped her coffee, letting the steam rise into the cool night. The difference is, now people know they can stand up. They know they're stronger together. As she closed her eyes, breathing deeply. It's not about being the sheriff, she continued softly. It's about being a neighbor, being a human. About showing people they don't have to live in fear of a clipboard or a loud voice. I reached over, holding her hand. You gave them that. Elena opened her eyes, looking at me with a small, tired smile. No, she said. They gave it to themselves, I just reminded them. Moving forward over the next few weeks, Willowbrook began to truly heal. The HOA held real elections with oversight, the fake fines were dismissed, and small refunds were issued from the HOA funds Karen had hoarded. Neighbors painted fences, planted flowers, and waved at each other without fear. Kids drew with chalk on sidewalks again, and nobody came to take photos or yell. And as for Alina, she returned to work at the sheriff's department, her badge no longer a burden, but a reminder of why she did what she did. She wasn't just the sheriff. She was a neighbor. A protector. A reminder that power is not about control. It's about responsibility. The lesson Willowbrook would never forget what Karen did. But they would also never forget how they reclaimed their peace. Not with shouting. Not with fear, but by standing together. And Alina. She sat on that porch every morning, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over a neighborhood that finally felt like home. Willowbrook didn't return to what it once was. It became something better, a true community. Neighbors now smile and greet each other as they pass. Children draw flowers and stars in chalk across the sidewalks, leaving their names on the pavement, no longer afraid of someone taking photos to threaten them with fines. The HOA no longer holds tense meetings. Instead, there are warm gatherings where people share stories, laugh, enjoy pastries, and remind each other to keep the neighborhood tidy. Not out of fear, but out of respect for one another. And Alina. She returned to the sheriff's department with a renewed spirit. Not for power. Not for the badge. But to protect the peace that had been reclaimed through the courage of an entire community. Life isn't always fair. But the story of Alina and Willowbrook reminds us, no one can take away your peace, your love, or your precious memories if you dare to stand up and protect them. You don't need to be a sheriff. You don't need power. You don't need a badge. All you need is to believe in what's right, believe your community, and believe in the quiet strength within you. And when tomorrow comes, you can sit on your porch with a warm cup of coffee, watching the morning sun, smiling softly, knowing, peace often begins the moment you dare to say no to bullies. And you will realize you are stronger than you ever imagined when you stand up to protect what you love. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to hit like. It's a small action for you, but it means the world to this channel, and helps us keep sharing stories that matter. If you haven't yet, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next inspiring story that might be exactly what you need to hear on a tough day. And if you know someone who's ever felt powerless against a bully, or someone who needs a reminder that peace is worth protecting, share this video with them. We are stronger when we stand together, and your share might be the light someone else needs to keep going. Comment, P.A.C. below if you believe that even though there will always be darkness in the world, the light of kindness will always find a way to shine through. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. It means more than you know. I can't wait to see you in the next video, where we will continue to share stories that inspire, empower, and remind us all that courage starts with one small step, and you are stronger than you think. Stay safe, stay kind, and remember, your voice matters.